So I welcome everybody to tonight's Versammling, our discussion group with Brian Benjamin Schulman and Jerry Lipstein, Baruch, Jerry Lipstein, Miriam Berenbaum, and the one and only Peggy Pardo, the unique. We're all unique. I had a conversation this afternoon with somebody who's in Europe, and he was talking to me about somebody that he had met, a Jewish lady who was very deeply involved in New Age philosophy, New Age teaching. And he knows so many people. He says that there's a kibbutz in Israel right now where they teach a lot of the TM and yoga, and a lot of the Israeli army, after the soldiers, after they come out of the army, they head off to India. And more and more, we see the things that we're reading about in the Torah. In the Torah, we don't know how to relate to it because we think of the gods of Egypt, how our people were all immersed in the gods of Egypt. And here Moses, in this last book of Deuteronomy that we're going to read today, Moses is warning this second generation, because the first generation had actually of over 20 years old. The 20-year-olds were the soldiers, but anybody older were told that they were going to die in the desert and they wouldn't come into the promised land. So Moses was warning the next generation, just as we need to warn this generation, because the gods of Egypt were no different in their philosophy as the gods of this world. And and I know well what it is to get involved with New Age thinking. Basically, we're worshiping other gods, even though it has a different look than what it was in Egypt. In Egypt, they would bow down to their gods. Here, they bow down to Sai Baba and to the other, maybe Hindu gods and whatever else, Buddhist. Pardon, Brian?
A god called Vishnu.
Vishnu, Krishna, Vishnu. And basically, so we did the 4 books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, good, Brian. Numbers. And then at the end of Numbers, we read that God took Moses. He went up to the mountain the way Aaron did, and God just took him. Imagine if God spoke to you and said, okay, this afternoon, finish everything you're going to do. This afternoon, I'm taking you up to Mount Royal and you're going to die. And what a way to go when you think about it. It's just like a fantastic way, because you're literally, your spirit is taken out of your body, and your body, it's just a beautiful way of going. So Moses was gone. And who took over from Moses? Joshua. So the next book you would think would be Joshua. But instead, it's Deuteronomy, which is a repeat. Devarim means words, the words. Ha'ele ha'devarim. These are the words which God gave Moses to bring to us. But what I thought we would start with, but I'd like to read just a couple of the first chapters of Joshua. And then when we go back and we see Devarim, you're going to see the similarities of what it says in the book. Let me just share the screen. So here's Joshua 1. You see here it says, after the death of Moses, which is a direct following from the last book of Numbers. After the death of Moses, the servant of God, God said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' attendant, my servant Moses is dead. Prepare to cross the Jordan, together with all this people, into the land that I am giving to the Israelites. Every spot on which your foot treads, I give to you, as I promised Moses, Imagine everywhere. And look how huge this territory is going to be, because eventually this is going to belong to us. Your territory shall extend from the wilderness, from the desert, and the Lebanon, to the great river, the river Euphrates on the east, the whole of the Hittite country, up to the Mediterranean Sea on the west. No one will be able to resist you as long as you live. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not fail you, nor forsake you. How many of us need to remember that in our daily lives, that God will never fail us or forsake us? And he says, be strong and resolute, for you shall apportion to this people the land I swore to their fathers to assign to them. How difficult it is for us to struggle to be strong and resolute in what God has given us to do. But you must be very strong and resolute. And look what he's saying. We are to be strong and resolute to observe faithfully all the teaching that my servant Moses enjoined upon you. Do not deviate from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Imagine if we always did that, how successful our lives would be. It doesn't necessarily mean we would be wealthy, but we would be fulfilled. We would have shalom. Don't let this book of the teaching cease from your lips, but recite it day and night, so that you may observe faithfully all that is written in it. How else would we know except that we read it? Only then will you prosper in your undertakings, and only then will you be successful. I charge you, be strong and resolute. Do not be terrified or dismayed, for the eternal, your God, is with you wherever you go. Joshua thereupon gave orders to the officials, the judges of the people. Go through the camp, charge the people thus. Get provisions ready, for in 3 days you're going to cross the Jordan in order to enter and possess the land that the eternal your God is giving you as a possession. Then Joshua said to Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. Now that at the end of the book of Numbers, we read that these tribes, Reuben, the firstborn, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, all went to Moses, and they said to Moses, we have too many cattle. We want to stay on this side of the Jordan, where there's lots of pasture. And then here Joshua is reminding them what Moses said. Remember what Moses, the servant of God, enjoined upon you when he said, the eternal your God is granting you a haven and assigning this territory to you. Let your wives, your children, and your livestock remain in the land that the Lord assigned to you on this side of the Jordan. But every one of your fighting men shall go across armed in the van of your kindred, and you shall assist them until God has given your kindred a haven, such as you have, and they too have gained possession of the land that the eternal your God has assigned them. In other words, their armies had to go across to the other side, and not until they had received the land could they go back and be with their families.
How could I just start imagining this whole scene and the women and the children being alone with the cattle. Could you imagine?
Well, they still had servants. These were
No,
armed.
I know. But I mean,
Yeah.
when we talk about now, well, this is a deviation. I'll talk more, but I just find that an amazing picture.
Yeah, it was.
You know? It's like,
But
yeah.
not only that, because they decided, you see, when we make a decision for the moment, and we don't always realize what's coming, what is in the future. Here they decided, just like Lot decided when Abraham said, take a look, their cattlemen were fighting. There wasn't enough room. And Abraham said to Lot, choose the land where you're going to go. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. And he looked and he saw that the land around Sodom and Gomorrah was perfect. So he decided that's where he was going to stay. And he chose that land, but look what he chose. He chose for wealth, and they're doing the same thing. And then years later, when the Syria came in and took the people captive, Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh were the first ones to be taken into captivity into Assyria because of the decision that they made not to go into the promised land and be with their brothers. Then you may return to the land on the east side of the Jordan, which Moses, a servant of God, assigned to you as your possession. You may possess it. They answered Joshua, we will do everything you have commanded us, and we will go wherever you send us. We will obey you just as we obeyed Moses. Well, let me tell you, they didn't do such a great job obeying Moses. But let the eternal your God be with you as he was with Moses. Anyone who flouts your command and does not obey every order you give him shall be put to death. Only be strong and resolute. And this now is a story of Joshua, and we can read this another day. But let's go back to, I want to go to back to our Deuteronomy, and we're going to begin at the first chapter. So these are the words that Moses addressed all the Israel on the other side of the Jordan. So they had crossed over. And he's saying to them this. Now, this is what he's going to talk about. This is kind of an introduction through the wilderness.
Sorry, this is before they cross over or after they cross over? Isn't this, they're still with Reuben and they're going to cross over, I think? Or they've crossed?
They're about to cross over.
Okay.
They haven't crossed over yet.
Okay.
He's reminding them, Moses is reminding them that they went through the wilderness. They were in the Arava, in the desert, near Suf. Remember this Yam Suf, between Param and Tophel, Lavan, Hazerot, and Dizachav. Now we've learned that every one of these names has a meaning. Like, for instance, Laban means white in English. Lavan is white. And it's a picture of showing them that Lavan was important for them to remember, because it was there that they were given the manna, which was white. It was like frost on the ground, and they would gather it. Here, Zahav is gold, to remind them of the golden calf. So each one of these places was to remind them of something. And here he's reminding them, it's an 11-day journey from Horeb, from Mount Sinai, to Kadesh Barnea by Mount Seir, which is at the border of where they were going to cross into the promised land. So he's reminding them it was only supposed to be 11 days, but here they were in the 40th year. And why were they there for 40 years? Because of their disobedience. And it was on the first day of the 11th month that Moses addressed the Israelites in accordance with the instructions that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh had given him for them. So this is important. The instructions that were given to Moses by Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh for the people. Moses didn't go up and with his own wisdom write these words. Now it says he had defeated, it says Moses had defeated, but we know Moses led the people, but he represents all the armies of Israel. He had defeated Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who dwelt in Ashtaroth and Edrei. This King Og is mentioned 10 times, and he has to do, when I was looking it up, he's like the king of the underworld. He's a giant. He was like one of the Nephilim. He was really a bad dude. On the other side of the Jordan, in the land of Moab, Moses undertook to expound this teaching. So now they're on the other side. And he's speaking to them on the other side of the Jordan. They're in the land. And he's telling them, our God, Yud-He-Vav-He, spoke to us at Mount Sinai. That's another word for Horeb, saying, you have stayed long enough at this mountain. Start out and make your way to the hill country of the Amori and to all their neighbors in the Arava, the desert, the hill country, the Shephelah, the Negev, the sea coast, the land of the Canaanites, and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. So here he's telling them to start to move into these territories. And look what he says. See, I place the land at your disposal. Go, take possession of the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to assign to them and to their heirs after them. That's us. That land belongs to us. But here Moses is speaking and says, thereupon I said to you, I cannot bear the burden of you by myself. Your God, Yud-He-Vav-He, has multiplied you until you are today as numerous as the stars in the sky. May Yud-He-Vav-He, the God of your ancestors, increase your numbers 1,000-fold and bless you as he promised. How can I bear unaided the trouble of you and the burden and the bickering? There was constant complaining, fetching. Pick from each of your tribes leaders, candidates who are wise, discerning, and experienced, and I will appoint them as your heads. You answered me and said, what you propose to do is good. So I took your tribal leaders, wise and experienced men, and appointed them heads over you. There were chiefs of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of 50s, chiefs of tens, and officials for your tribes. So it's like you have, like today, a president of the United States, or the head of state, or like the province, the provincial heads. Here, chiefs of 50s. We have different size groups that people were going to be able to handle. I charged your magistrates at that time as follows. Listen, hear out your fellow Israelites and decide with justice between one party and the other. In other words, don't play favorites, don't take a bribe. Whether it be a fellow Israelite or the ger who is living among us. Remember, we always had the stranger among us, those who are not natural born Israelites, always made up part of the commonwealth of Israel. You shall not be partial in judgment. Listen to both sides. Hear those who are of a low station and those of a high station. Fear neither party. Don't be afraid of them just because someone is rich or because someone is low and has the mafia on their side. Be just, for judgment is God's. And any matter that is too difficult for you, bring it to me and I will hear it. This is Moses speaking, remember. Thus I instructed you at that time about the various things you shall do. And he's reminding them. This is the next generation, remember, who is reminding them. We left Horeb. We traveled a great and terrible wilderness that you saw. Now, these people had never been slaves. They didn't know what slavery was like. They had lived in the desert for 40 years. And they had seen along the road what they saw along the road to the hill country of the Amorites, as our God, Yud-He-Vav-He, had commanded us. When we reached Kadesh Barnea, I said to you, you have come to the hill country of the Amorites. which our God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, is giving to us. See, again, your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, has placed the land at your disposal. Go up, take possession, as Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Lord your God, has promised you. Do not fear and do not be dismayed. How often does he repeat it over and over and over? Because we do not listen. Then all of you came to me and said, let us send messengers ahead to reconnoiter the land for us and bring back the word on the route we shall follow and the cities we shall come to. But if you remember, back then, it was in Numbers, I think, Numbers 13. It was the Lord who spoke to Moses, who said, send men. But here, Moses is almost afraid to say that it was God who said. He changed it, and I have the reasons. I looked it up, and I can send it to you if you want in an email. Just let me know if you want to hear what I think it was. I don't know if it was Rashi or one of our rabbis tell us why Moses changed it, and it made sense to me. So here, I approved of the plan. So I selected from among you 12 men, one representative from each tribe. And they went to the hill country, and they came to the Wadi Eshkol and spied it out. They took some of the fruit of the land with them and brought it down to us, and they gave us this report. It is a good land that our God is giving us. Is that all they said? We know, no. We know that they were afraid. They said, yes, it's a good land. What?
They kvetched.
They kvetched. There were giants in the land. Exactly. But you refused to go up, and you flouted the command of the Lord your God. You sulked in your tents and said, it's out of hatred for us that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh brought us out of the land of Egypt to hand us over to the Amorites, to wipe us out. Imagine. What kind of a place are we going to? Our brothers have taken the heart out of us. Oy, yeah. How many mothers have said to their kids, you're taking my heart out? Our brothers have taken the heart out of us, saying, we saw there a people stronger and taller than us, large cities with walls sky high, and the Anakim, these were giants. I said to you, have no dread or fear of them. None other than your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, Lord of the armies, who goes before you, will fight for you, just as he did for you in Egypt before your very eyes. And in the wilderness, where you saw how your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, carried you, as a father carries his son, all the way that you traveled until you came to this place. Yet for all that, you have no faith, no faith in your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. How many people today who we speak to, who say, yeah, I believe in God, have no faith in him. They know he's there, but they think, he's too busy, or they don't even care that he's there. But here he's saying, yet for all that, you have no faith in your God, who goes before you on your journeys, who scouts the place where you are to encamp, fire by night, cloud by day, to guide you on the route that you are to follow. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh heard your loud complaint, and he became angry, and he vowed not one of those involved, not one of this evil generation shall see the good land that I swore to give to your fathers. No one except Caleb. Caleb is mentioned first. He is a Gentile, a Ger, son of Jephunneh, a Kenizzite. He shall see it. And to him and his descendants will I give the land on which he set foot, because he remained loyal to Yud He Vav He. So here God is telling us that he is apportioning some of the land to the ger, the stranger among us. Because of you, Yud He Vav He was incensed with me, saying, you shall not enter it either. So here he's blaming them. We can see how human Moses is. Because even though he's telling the people that they were just complaining, here he is complaining too, that it's because of you that I couldn't go in. So easy to blame others for the things that, for our circumstances. But it's interesting. I want you to look at something carefully here. He's telling that Caleb would be given some land, the land where he's going to choose, on which he set foot, because he was loyal. But Joshua had a different role. Joshua, the son of Nun, who attends Moses, he shall enter. Imbue him with strength, for he shall allot it to Israel. It's going to be Joshua who is going to lead the people to acquire this land of Israel. That's his role. Moreover, your little ones who you said would be carried off, your children who do not yet know good from bad, they shall enter it. To them will I give it. They shall possess it. And as for you, turn around, march into the wilderness by way of Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds. You replied to me saying, here, they're admitting that they were guilty. We stand guilty before Yud He Vav He. We will go up now and fight, just as our God Yud He Vav He commanded us. And the men among you each girded yourself with war gear and recklessly started for the hill country. So here they admitted they were guilty, but they still weren't being obedient. You see, there are many steps for us to walk to be in a relationship with God. Number one is the acknowledgement, the admission that we are doing something wrong. But the second step is to turn around, to humble ourselves and be obedient to our God and to make restitution for what we do. But here they weren't doing that. They were taking matters into their own hands. But Yud He Vav He said to me, warn them, do not go up and do not fight, since I am not in your midst. You will be routed by your enemies. And here Moses is saying, I spoke to you, but you would not listen. You flouted God's command and you willfully marched into the hill countries.
How often do we make sort of proud or arrogant choices, and we kind of think we're doing God's work, or whatever, and it's similar to that.
Exactly. But not only that, I forgot. I was going to say something and it just, anyway, I'll hopefully I'll remember it. Then the Amorites who lived in those hills came out against you like so many bees and chased you, and they crushed you at Hormah in Seir. Oh yes, I remember now. We have a very strong Israeli army. There's no doubt that God is with us. But sometimes when we boast that it's the Israelites, that the Israelis and their ability to arm themselves and to have great spies and whatever it is, if they think it's all because of them that we win, we've lost. It's because of God. And again, you wept before Yud He Vav He. But Yud He Vav He would not heed your cry or give ear to you. How often do we hear that? We cried out to God, but he didn't hear us. He doesn't listen. It's because of us. It's what we do. We have to accept responsibility for the decisions that we make. So after you had remained in Kadesh all that long period of time, we marched back into the wilderness by way of the Sea of Reeds, as the Lord had spoken to me, and we skirted the hill country of Seir a long time. Then the Lord said to me, you have been skirting this hill country long enough. Now turn north. Now we're going to see one of the things that why we were skirting the hill country of Seir. Charge the people as follows. You will be passing through the territory of your relatives, the descendants of Esau. And who was Esau? The twin brother of
Isaac and Esau.
Isaac. Exactly. So Esau, Isaac became one of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Esau became an Edomite, a Gentile, same parents, same blood, but has
That's
nothing.
amazing. And it's so obvious, but you could skim over that. From years ago, like I remember, I said, my God, I never realized it. We just take it for granted that Esau is not an Israelite and Isaac was, but it's not true. They're both the same
exactly.
father, same parent. No,
And
not the same
because
parent,
it's
same
not
father.
same parents.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, the same parents.
They were twins.
Yes. The
You're
same
thinking of
parents.
Ishmael.
One is an Israelite and one isn't.
One is not, because it's not by blood.
Exactly.
It's not by race. It's by choice of how we live our lives.
Right.
So here, the descendants of Esau, they live in Seir. Though they be afraid of you, be very careful not to provoke them. For I will not give you their land, so much as a foot will you be able to tread on. I have given the hill country of Seir as a possession to Esau.
I find that amazing. Like when you really look at it, that God was even blessing Esau.
Yes.
But that's amazing. He
Yes.
said he gave them that place.
Exactly. Whatever food you eat, you shall obtain from them for money. Even the water you drink, you shall procure from them for money. Indeed, your Lord God has blessed you in all your undertakings. God has watched over your wanderings through this great wilderness. Your God has been with you these past 40 years. You have lacked nothing. Remember, he's reminding this generation what our God is doing. And he's like a father who knows he's going to be leaving very soon, and he's got to give them all these instructions that we're going to read in the book of Deuteronomy. This is the introduction, the first part. We then moved on away from our kin, the descendants of Esau who live in Seir, away from the road of the Arava, away from Eilat and Etzion Gever, and we marched on in the direction of the wilderness of Moab, where we were told never to go. But look what God said to us. And Yud-He said to me, Yud-He-Vav-He said to me, do not harass the Moabites or provoke them to war, for I will not give you any of their land as a possession. I have assigned Ar as a possession to the descendants of Lot. Remember, Lot was the father of the Moabites and the Ammonites.
Right.
It was formerly this land was formerly inhabited by the Emim, a people great and numerous and as tall as the Anakim. And like the Anakim, they are counted as Rephaim. But the Moabites called them Emim. Similarly, Seir was formerly inhabited by the Horim. So you see, Esau dispossessed them. The descendants of Esau dispossessed them from the land, wiping them out and settling in their place. So we see that all these different peoples were dispossessing other peoples. And it says, just as Israel did in the land they were to possess, which the Lord had given to them. Now the Lord gave it to them because we read in another place that the sin of the people living in that land had to reach a certain amount of evil before God said, enough. They have to get out. Up now, cross the Wadi
Just a
Zeret.
question, sorry.
Yeah,
The Moabites, like, do you know what that is now? The land that he gave to, said that's their land, and then where he said he gave also land to Esau's descendants?
yeah, I
What
don't
are those-
remember it offhand.
Okay,
but
those countries now.
Yeah, but obviously it's all the Arab, they're all
Yeah,
Arab
but I mean,
nations right now.
not all of the Arab territories. So some of these territories.
Some of them are occupied, what they call occupied territories. Some
No,
are,
so according to this, that is their land.
yeah, exactly.
So,
Jordan
so
is part,
it's not what we call Israel now.
no, but it will be one day.
Even the land that he said was Esau, he's given it to Esau?
No, I think that will remain with.
Yeah,
the
because that's what
descendants
I
of
would
Esau.
like. I'm curious about that.
Well,
Anyway,
go
I'll
to
look at that.
go to Daddy Google.
I'll go to Daddy Google.
Up now, cross the Wadi Zeret. So we crossed the Wadi Zeret. The time that we spent in travel from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the Wadi Zeret was 38 years. Until that entire generation of warriors had perished from the camp, as Yud-He Vav-He had sworn concerning them. It's interesting, this 38 years, because let's see, 1989 is when I became a believer in our God. I mean, truly a follower. Today we're 2023. So that's 4, that's 3. So 34 years. So in 4 years, I will have been totally changed from the time that I turned around and turned back to God. I'm
Wow.
absolutely not the same person as these
Wow.
people had to be. Completely different from those who perished in the desert. Indeed, the hand of the Lord struck them to root them out from the camp until they were finished off. When all the warriors among the people had died off, the Lord, this is of Israel. When all the warriors of Israel among the people had died off, the Lord spoke to me saying, "You are now passing through the territory of Moab, through Ar. You will then be close to the Ammonites. Do not harass them or start a fight with them, for I will not give any part of the land of the Ammonites to you as a possession. I have assigned it as a possession to the descendants of Lot. It too is counted as Rephaim country. It was formerly inhabited by Rephaim, whom the Ammonites called Zamzumim, a people great and numerous, as tall as the Anakim. Yud-He Vav-He wiped them out so that the Ammoni dispossessed them and settled in their place, as God did for the descendants of Esau, who live in Shear. So God did that for them by wiping out the Horim before them. Remember, these other people were so pagan, merciless, and no sense of morality. So they dispossessed them and settled in their place, as is still the case. Because remember, Esau still had parents who were followers of God.
Right.
So too with the Avim who dwelt in the villages in the vicinity of Gaza, which is today, and the Kaftorim who came from Crete, wiped them out and settled in their place. Set up across the Wadi Arnon. See, I give into your power Sihon, the Amorite king of Heshbon and his land. Begin the occupation, engage him in battle. This day I begin to put the dread and fear of you upon the peoples everywhere under heaven, so that they shall tremble and quake because of you wherever they hear you mentioned. And remember, before I was going to read the 2nd chapter of Joshua, this is exactly what Rahav, who lived on the wall, when Joshua sent out 2 men, 2 spies, and Rahav said to them, the people are in fear and dread of you. Everybody has heard what God has done. Then I sent messengers from the wilderness of Kedemot to King Sihon of Heshbon with an offer of peace. Let me pass through your country. I will keep strictly to the highway, neither turning off to the right nor to the left. Whatever food I eat, you will supply for money, and whatever water I drink, you will furnish for money. Just let me pass through, as the descendants of Esau, who dwell in Shear, did for me, and the Moabites who dwell in Ar, that I may cross the Jordan into the land that our God is giving us. But King Sihon of Heshbon refused to let us pass through, because Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh had stiffened his will and hardened his heart in order to deliver him into your power, as is now the case, just as he did with Pharaoh.
Right.
And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to me, see, I begin by placing Sihon and his land at your disposal. Begin the occupation. Take possession of the land. Sihon with all his troops took the field against us at Yachaz. And our God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, delivered him to us. And we defeated him and his sons and all his armies, all his troops. At that time, we captured all his towns, and we destroyed every town, men, women, and children, leaving no survivor. We retained as booty only the cattle and the spoils of the cities that we captured. That's how evil those people were. They had to be completely destroyed. From our Aroer on the edge of the Arnon Valley, including the town in the valley itself, to Gilead, not a city was too mighty for us. Our God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, delivered everything to us. But you did not encroach upon the land of the Ammonites, all along the Wadi Yabok and the towns of the hill country, just as our God had commanded. We made our way up the road toward Bashan. Here it's mentioned again. King of Og of Bashan with all his troops took the field against us at Edrei. But Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to me, do not fear him, for I am delivering him and his troops and his country into your power. And you will do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amori, who lived in Heshbon. So our God also delivered into our power King Og of Bashan with all his troops. And we dealt them such a blow that no survivor was left. At that time, we captured all his towns. There was not a town we did not take from them. 60 towns, the whole district of Argov, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All those towns were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars. We read about the same thing here in Ezekiel. In Ezekiel, I think it's chapter 39, where God says one day Israel will take down all its high walls and gates and bars, and they will live in unwalled villages. And that's when the armies will start to get an idea, we're going to go down and attack, and that will be the final battle. We doomed them as we had done in the case of King Sihon of Heshbon. We doomed every town. We destroyed every town, men, women, and children, and retained as booty all the cattle and the spoils of the town. Thus we seized at that time from the two Amorite kings the country beyond the Jordan, from the Wadi Arnon to Mount Hermon. Sidonians called Hermon Sidon, and the Amorites called it Senir. All the towns of the tableland and the whole of Gilead, Bashan, as far as Salcah and Edrei, the towns of Og's kingdom in Bashan. This is how powerful Og was, but it was nothing against our God. Only King Og of Bashan was left of the remaining Rephaim. His bed, an iron bed, is now in Rabbah of the Ammonites. It is 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide by the standard cubit. This is to show how huge this man was. And this is the land which we apportioned at that time. The part from Aroer along the Wadi Arnon is the part of the hill country of Gilead and its towns. I assigned to Reuben and to Gad. The rest of Gilead and all of Bashan under Og's rule, the whole of the Argob district, all of that part of Bashan, which is called Rephaim, I assigned to the half-tribe of Manasseh. Yair, son of Manasseh, received the whole Argob district, that is Bashan, as far as the boundary of the Geshurim and the Makati, and named it after himself Havot Yair, as is still the case. And then I went to look up Havot Yair, and today there is an Israeli settlement there on the West Bank, and it was fine. It was an illegal outpost until 2021, and it's part of the Samarian Council. There's a Samarian Council that watches over this area. To Machir, I assigned Gilead. The Reubenites, the Gadites, I assigned the part from Gilead down to the Wadi Arnon, the middle of the Wadi being the boundary, and up to the Wadi Yabok, the boundary of the Ammoni. We seized the Arava, the desert, from the foot slopes of Pisgah on the east to the edge of the Jordan, and from the Kinneret, Kinneret is the Sea of Galilee, down to the Sea of the Arabah, the Dead Sea. At that time I charged you, men of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, saying, your God has given you this country to possess. You must go as shock troops, warriors, all, at the head of your Israelite kin. Only your wives, your children, and livestock, and I know that you have a lot of livestock, shall be left in the towns I've assigned to you, until the Lord has granted your kin a haven, such as you have, and they too have taken possession of the land your God is assigning to them beyond the Jordan. See, God has to repeat over and over. How often do we as parents have to repeat the same thing to our children until they finally get it? God is doing the same thing with us. Then you may return each to the homestead that I have assigned to him. I also charged Joshua at that time, saying, you have seen with your own eyes all that your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, has done to these two kings. So shall Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh do to all the kingdoms into which you shall cross over. Do not fear them, for it is your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, who will battle for you. Next week, we will go into Ba'et Hanan. So this is the end of Devarim. And we see how God is showing us, no matter what we go through in our lives, don't be afraid. Do not fear. God is with us. Yes, we will fail. Yes, we will make mistakes. But when we're walking with our God, there are two types of spirals. When we walk with our God, there's the upward spiral. And when you look at a spiral, you can see that it goes around and around, but it's an upward spiral. So sometimes it seems that we've gone to the same place. We're going through the same situation as we've been before, but we're a little bit higher. We're wiser, we're stronger. We can handle it better than we could have before. It's like take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. When we're not walking with our God, when we don't trust him, the spiral of our life is downward, and we just keep going down and down and down until at the end we've lost all hope. So I pray for us, those of us who are walking with our God, that we will always remember, do not fear, do not be dismayed. And it's so easy because our minds, our emotions, the world, there are so many enemies out there, so many things that we have to battle with that are constantly after us. We have the battles of our mind, the battle for our emotions, and we have to talk ourselves through it. Either we talk with a friend, or we read the scriptures, or we talk to ourselves, we take a walk, we go to nature, whatever it takes to remind us, do not fear, God is here. That's really the bottom line of everything we need to know.
I wonder, like, sometimes I think if we could see, like, the whole spiritual realm, like, and now I'm getting a little fly-a, but if we could see the whole spiritual realm and see, just as God, I mean, we partner with God, and God says, I have given this country, let's say, to the descendants of Esau, you know,
Yes.
and with this country, like, what's, like, what, you know, if you saw Africa and Europe and saw all the angels, like what, even though we have free will, God is always in it. So I'm saying, I wonder what it would look like what's going on if there's certain lands that God is saying, no, this belongs to this group of people or whatever.
Right. Let me show you one thing here. Let me find it, and then I'll let's see. It's in 2 Kings. Let's see if I can find this here in the Tanakh. And 2 Kings, 1 Kings, 2 Kings. No, 1 Kings 6. Sorry. 1 Kings, verse 6. Let me just share the screen. I think this is where it is. Give me that. No, this is not it. It's, remember the place where Gehazi, it must be, Gehazi opens God's eyes for his head. Where are you? Elisha's servant. Oh no, it's 2 Kings. I was right. Hang on. Nach. 2 Kings 6. 2 Kings 6, 17 to 20. Here. Okay. Just want to show you something. So here it says, greatly agitated about this matter, the king of Aram summoned his officers and said to them, tell me, who of us is on the side of king of Israel? No one, my lord, said one of the officers. Elisha, that prophet in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. This is a false prophet speaking. Go find out where he is so that I can have him seized. It was reported to him that Elisha was in Dothan. So he sent horses and chariots there and a strong force. And they arrived at night and encircled the town. When the attendant of the agent of God rose early and went outside, he saw a force with horses and chariots surrounding the town. Alas, master, what shall we do? His servant asked him. Have no fear. There are more on our side than on theirs. Then Elisha prayed, Eternal One, open his eyes. He's talking about Gehazi now, and let him see. And God opened the servant's eyes, and he saw the hills all around Elisha covered with horses and chariots of fire. The Arameans came down against him, and Elisha prayed to God, strike this people with a blinding light. And they were struck with a blinding light, as Elisha had said. So we see that, and I remember a story that we were told during the war.
Right.
It wasn't the 6-day war.
Oh.
It was the Yom Kippur War. And the Egyptians at one point were winning the battle. And suddenly, and all the tanks were coming right into Israel. They were nothing could stop them. Our army had started too late. Golda Meir wasn't sure whether they could trust the intel, and they went at the last minute. They got people out of the synagogues, but they were losing, and they were going to be destroyed. And suddenly, and we were told this by a soldier who was there, the tanks stopped, the Egyptian tanks, and people started getting out and running in the opposite direction back toward Egypt. They were afraid. And some of these soldiers, the Egyptian soldiers, who are not cowards by any means, were captured, and they were asked, "You were winning. Why did you run?" And they said, "Didn't you see all the chariots, all the armies?" That they saw a host of chariots that were not part of Israel. It's like God had opened their eyes to see he's called Adonai Tzevaot, the Lord of the armies. So even though we cannot see what's going on, and we don't know who's going before us to do battle, but God is with us. He's a cloud by day and a fire by night. He lights our path if only we would just be quiet and be silent and not be afraid. And it's so hard because we're frail.
Yeah.
If Moses, our great Moses, could fail so that he wasn't allowed to enter the promised land, who are we to think we're not going to fail?
Or succeed, depending on our.
Or succeed.
Yeah.
Who says we have to succeed in the way the world says succeed?
Right.
You know, success for me is I wake up in the morning and I thank God and I have a sense of peace because I'm not so overwhelmed with life that I can handle my day. Sometimes we want too much, and sometimes we can't handle too much.
Yeah. Or the wrong things.
Yeah, and exactly. Let us handle, like, if you look at Moses was not the one to choose Joshua to follow after him. You would think that Moses' sons would have followed after him like Aaron's sons. But you never hear about Moses' sons anymore. They went back to live with the mother, I guess, in Midian.
Midian.
Yeah. So not even his sons followed Moses. So really, if our children don't follow what we believe, we can't completely blame us. We have responsibility to teach them, but ultimately it's the decision of every human being. And that's the beauty of this Torah and why I love it so much.
Yeah.
So, Jerry, you have been very quiet tonight. I'm sorry I didn't ask you to read. I was just so into it that
It's
okay.
good. You're good at reading.
Pardon?
Well, so
Thank
is
you.
Greg.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
Well, I think Peggy's a very well. You're both good at reading. I'm not a.
well, it's a matter of animating what it says, and really, and this way I can take the time to explain when I've read it before, and the whole idea of Yud He Vav He. I wish I knew how to pronounce it. Moses knew. Our people knew up to the time of the destruction of the temple. And then after that, slowly over time, it was lost to us. And it's not pronounced now because we simply don't know how, but also because they say they don't want to take the Lord's name in vain. But not pronouncing the name and taking the Lord's name in vain are two very different
It's
things.
too literal.
It's
It's
exactly.
not about the physical sounds of the words.
Exactly. The Torah is not to be taken literally or chronologically or historically, although it's all of those things. It's to step back as a beautiful mosaic and to look at it as a book of principles that was given to us to bring to all the nations of the world. There's only one God and one book. There's no books for this one and this book for that one and this God for this one. It's one for all peoples. And until we get that, the world is going to continue on this spiral that it's on, which sadly enough is a downward spiral. So we just have to keep praying that we can be a light in whatever small community God has given us. As it says here, some were made over thousands, leaders over thousands, some over hundreds, some over tens. And each of us has our, what we call circle of influence. And in our circle of influence where God has put us, may we be a light to them in our behavior, not to be like some people. And I hate to say it, but my father was one who said, don't do as I do as I say.
No, don't do as I, oh yeah, right.
But that will never work
No,
because our children watch us and they see hypocrisy. If we don't do as we say, they will not do as we tell them to do. That's why there's so much hypocrisy in religion, because you cannot live up to religions that have so many rules and regulations that are enough to choke you to death. But that's not what God gave us. He says the word is near to your heart. It's in your mouth. And look here, he's saying, read it every day so that you will know how to live. And basically, the bottom line, he's talking about the commandments, the 10 commandments, which were written in stone. And the rest of the Torah is all about its application. What happens when we obey? What happens when we disobey?
yeah.
So if there is nothing more to add, Jerry, do you have anything you would like to comment on? Did you write
Well,
anything
You're good,
down?
you're good, Peggy.
Thank
You
you.
don't have to add or detract anything to what you said.
That's what God said. Don't add and don't take away from my word. That's cute. All
We're
right.
on this journey. That's why I love this story. All stories, I mean, like what Pilgrim's Progress and those kind of stories are such good stories, because the story of life, our voyage through this, navigating this life.
Well, that's exactly it. That's why we can see in every stage, if we go back and we look at all the different stages of our lives, the different points that, where we had an eye-opening experience. Like I remember the first time I ran away from home, I was 6. I didn't make it very far, but I was determined at 6 years old that I was going to have things my way. When I
Did
was
you
6,
pack anything up? Or you
I
just walked out the door?
I would have just walked out the door. I wasn't the type to pack. I never think in advance of what I'm going to do. That's why I always got into so much trouble. Now I have counselors. And the next great thing that I remember was at the age of 16, when I sat in a doctor's office, and this man was so sick, and he was falling over as he was writing a prescription for me, saying that I had a nervous stomach. And I looked at him, and he told me to take this medication. And I looked at this man who was so sick, and I said, how is he going to help me when he can't even help himself?
You said he was falling asleep, no?
He might have had narcolepsy, or maybe he was
Was
overworked.
overweight?
He was
Very
250 pounds. He was overweight. As he was writing the prescription, his pen was going down the page. The man was sick.
Wow.
I couldn't use him as an example for how I wanted to live my life. And all through my life, I can remember different people have come into my life, and I'd say, this one I could learn from. This one I could follow. And then the moment I couldn't learn any more from that person, the moment I saw, that's when I went on to something else. And so, but for the last 32 years, it's been Torah. And I haven't found anything that has stopped me from saying, this is the true path. We've tried every other path. This is the true path. We have God's system as laid down in the Torah against the systems of the world. And there are many. So if we learn how to follow God's simple system, not only will we be fulfilled and happy and healthy and have a sense of peace and have courage to go on and face another day, even though for moments we may fail. we can always come back and start again. It's just so fantastic. I can't stand it. All right, my boy chick and my girl chick. So next week, I look forward to Yochanan, and God willing, we'll see you again next Wednesday. Have a nice evening, and I'll send you out the recordings so you can forward it to all your circle of influence. Have a nice evening. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.